Hello, everybody. Awesome sessions. I'll be honest, there's no way I can follow some of the great content that we just had. The ways that I've kind of evolved a bit and been learning a lot about some new techniques, new ideas. And of course, I hear an echo for some reason. Hold on. Okay, I'm not sure what happened there. Let me hold on here. Sorry for this. Let's have another tab open. All right, I'm back. All right. Joys of technology. All right. So this is me in a nutshell. Here you can find me on social media and other endeavors like the Shining Developer Series, my curation efforts at our weekly, and more recently Adventures with Livestream, which is never a dull moment. Now, as you think about creating applications, especially as you escalate from prototype to production, you often start with what are some examples that you can draw from? And of course, we have great things like the official Shiny Gallery that's hosted on our Studio Shiny site. There are lots of great resources there, or example applications, many of which have come from recent Shiny contest submissions. And that's a gold mine in and of itself. So that's obviously one path you can take. But it wasn't always this way. In the early days, for those of us that used Shiny from the very beginning, this was the closest we could get to connecting to ideas was the Google mailing list that our Google group, I guess it was called, where we would talk back and forth, often with Joe Chang and others from our studio to chime in on what could be very complicated ideas or complicated issues that we were encountering when we were trying to take Shiny in directions that we didn't necessarily understand were possible, or even trying to understand things like reactivity. But it's a little different now. But I want to say is that there are amazing possibilities with Shiny applications. We've seen many of them in our Pharma and over the years. But like I said earlier, how do you go from like those initial prototypes where you're just playing around to actually getting to that more intermediate or production level? Do you have to literally switch careers and become a web JavaScript CSS ninja? No, you don't. Everything's within reach. My role today in this talk is to be an advocate for how I've been able to take advantage of what's out there, and I think you can too. First, this is an example screenshot of an application that I developed at my company that probably has over 30,000 lines of code spread across many modules, many business logic functions, interactions with high performance computing for a technique called graphical testing for multiplicity adjustment. It is by far the most complex thing I've ever built, but it honestly would not have been possible without taking ideas from each of the resources I'm about to share. You can see in the left sidebar, this is organized in kind of logical steps of an analytical pipeline. But behind them are individual modules, individual business functions, and so much other things happening under the hood. First, this application in its recent version has been completely overhauled to be a Golem application. I've been on record in multiple situations saying once you go Golem, you never go back. Because for me, making an application as a package, following software engineering best practices, has taken what was a spaghetti mess of code in the first version of that app and made it into something that A, made more sense to me from an engineering standpoint, and B, honestly made it more fun to develop. It's really about a process. If you trust the process, you're going great places with a package like Golem. I won't pretend that it's for everybody, but if you've been down this road before, especially before modules were a thing, this will help you bootstrap everything effectively and getting you started on the right foot. Of course, another great resource out there is Mastering Shiny, of course, by Hadley Wickham from our studio. This has a great way to balance the approach of practical examples and the fundamentals behind things like reactivity, kind of demystifying the magic behind that. If you're new to like truly understanding how to take that next step in application development. And it also reinforces powerful techniques for your general art development. And one nice aha moment, if you will, when I've been trying to link Shiny with concepts like programming in the tidyverse, is tidy evaluation in the context of Shiny. This has been a thorn in my side for a long time, but Hadley dedicates an entire chapter on this, where you take maybe a basic app that I drew from his example on the online book, and you want to obviously have a very simple UI in front of this, a select input, checkbox, table output. But the key is taking that with a data that you have in your application and be able to do the non-standard evaluation, the tidy evaluation stuff. And that's where I learned about this .data pronet or function. And there's another one alongside that for getting into environments. But now linking tidyverse concepts with Shiny makes more sense now that I've read that chapter. And throughout my big old app that I just showed, I have many examples where I'm using this space or this technique. I won't go over this too much because honestly, David covered so much great content about it, but he's obviously writing outstanding user interfaces with Shiny. It does a great job of connecting Shiny and other web technologies. But the parts that he does mention, and it was in his talk, are the frameworks that are at your fingertips for demystifying the connections between Shiny and the pipeline. So what I did in my outside endeavors is I was part of an online racing competition. And I, of course, in over-engineering stuff, I over-engineered what was amounting to be a random car selector. But all of this is themed, not because of me writing custom CSS. This is themed, honestly, with the BSLib package. And the function BSTheme, I feed in a background and foreground color, primary color, and the base font, which was from the game itself that we were playing with. And within the UI is just a simple parameter in Fluid Page. To quote a TV advertisement, it is just that easy. So now I feel like I can make applications stand out from the status quo and alleviate what Winston Chang told me in a conversation at past our studio conferences when he was bemoaning that most applications look the same. Well, with BSLib, you don't have to make things look the same anymore. And recently, John Kuhn, who was mentioned in David's talk, has authored JavaScript for R. This is uncovering the engine behind HTML widgets that are powered by JavaScript. And he even talks about the next generation of creating your own widget with the Packer package for bootstrapping. And you heard about this in David's talk. But John does talk about a cool concept that is available for even outside of Shiny called Crosstalk, where if you have two elements, maybe a plot, maybe a data table, things like that, even in this very slide presentation, I can simply select this and everything updates. But what John does in the book is talk about the innards of Crosstalk, how all this works. And so that means that my code inside it, in a nutshell, even for this very slide, looks something like this, where you have a shared data object. You have your two UI elements that you want to link together with the same data. And I just put them in a div, and that's it. Everything is interactive. And while in Shiny itself, we do this all the time with the classical input reactive relationships, the potential I see here is that if you have a big Shiny app that's getting the user to a certain decision, and you want to make an interactive output out of that decision, but preserve linkages and interactivity, who's to stop you from doing like an HTML report with Crosstalk enabled? HTML is the new wave of the future, as they say. So I was really excited to see that chapter kind of getting into the methodology behind this as a great kind of recap of everything going on there. So to wrap up, I think the destination of may not be quite Shiny Nirvana, but at least you're getting close to that, is within reach. These 4 books I mentioned will get you so far ahead than if you were starting with Shiny like I was and many others in this conference years ago when we were trying to kind of funnel our way through all this. So obviously I have the slides shared. I'll send the link out. But there's also great additional resources like the Shiny app stories from our studio, quick shameless plug for the Shiny Developer Series, and even a recent blog I found about hosting your Shiny apps in innovative ways, which I try to do for that very funny quiz app that I shared on the early part of the conference. So that's it for me. Hopefully that was useful to some of you. And I'll be back later on for the Shiny panel and scaling R and Shiny panel discussion later. Thank you.